If you ask any European about Škoda, the first things that probably come to mind are reliable, quality budget cars that are meant for ordinary people. But did you know that once upon a time, Škoda produced tanks and artillery weapons? What's the story behind this Czech company, its offshoots and subsidiaries, and how did it become so big? This is the story of the Czech industrial behemoth, and how it got to where it is today. Okay, so you see this guy? This absolute chat of a man? This is Emil Škoda, and he's the person who is the godfather of all Škoda companies. So, it's 1869, and our guy Emil is the main engineer of a factory owned by this royal guy in Plzeň. He wants to get into manufacturing, so he buys a 10-year-old foundry and engineering works where he's the main engineer. Turns out, Emil Škoda is actually a really good businessman, and by the 1880s, the Škoda Works factories in Plzeň are churning out everything from steel castings to machinery for sugar mills, breweries, mines, steam engines, and lots more. Beginning in the 1890s, Škoda continued to expand on both the domestic and international fronts, primarily in weapons manufacturing. Domestically, the Austro-Hungarian Navy had contracted the company to supply all of its artillery weaponry for its dreadnoughts, while internationally, Škoda produced guns bound for East Asia and South America. In the early 1900s, Škoda would also produce piping for the Niagara Falls power plant in the US and sluices for the Suez Canal in Egypt. During the First World War, the Škoda Works was rather lucky as the Czechoslovak lands were relatively untouched by the conflict. This, combined with the fact that the company was primarily an arms manufacturer at the time, meant that Škoda benefited heavily from the war. However, after the war, Škoda almost went bankrupt as the company had failed to diversify from arms sales following the collapse of Austria-Hungary and the establishment of the Czechoslovak state. It was during this time that a French arms maker, Schneider, stepped in and took over a majority stake in the company. With its newfound capital and backing, Škoda began to recover. A key part of Škoda's diversification strategy was to buy out many Czech industrial and manufacturing companies throughout the 1920s, such as the car company Laurin and Klement in 1925 and Avia in 1929. During this time, Škoda Works began to manufacture steam locomotives as well, with over 3,200 locos being produced across 68 different models between 1917 and 1958. At the same time that all this expansion was happening, arms production in Europe was gradually increasing in the build-up to World War II. So it was only natural for Škoda Works to return to its roots in the 1930s by once again ramping up weapons production with the opening of a munitions factory in Dubnica nad Váhom in Slovakia. By the time the Nazis take over Czechoslovakia in September 1938, Škoda was everywhere in the Czechoslovak lands, with the company owning subsidiaries, offshoots, and stakes in mines, power plants, railways, aircraft and car companies, and in many other industries. It's due to this that it was rather easy for the Germans to get Škoda to start producing weapons and vehicles for the German army, such as the Panzer 35T during World War II. Following the Second World War, Škoda and its subsidiaries were nationalized in the late 1940s under the Beneš and later new communist government in 1948. Following this, many Škoda subsidiaries were split off from the original Škoda Works. This was in an attempt to get Škoda Works to focus solely on heavy industry and transportation manufacturing. From 1951, Škoda and its offshoots primarily focused on the Eastern European and Soviet markets, as if the brand had a choice, being part of the Iron Curtain. For a period, the company's main industrial plant area in Plzeň was renamed to Zavody Vladimir Ilyanovich Lenina Plzeň, or ZVIL. However, this rename didn't go over well, as many people didn't recognize ZVIL as the former Škoda Works, and so the company was named back to the Škoda Works in 1964. From the mid-1960s onwards, Škoda began to focus more of its resources on car, bus, and locomotive manufacturing. From 1957 to 1989, the company would export over 2,000 electric locomotives to the Soviet Union. After the Velvet Revolution in 1989 and the dissolution of Czechoslovakia, Škoda once again came within a hair's breadth of bankruptcy, mostly due to a slew of terrible management mistakes related to the reprivatization of the company. But in classic Škoda style, the company was once again able to dig itself out of its financial rut and began to focus primarily on transportation, with its subsidiary of Škoda Transportation focusing on rolling stock production and Škoda Auto focusing on car production. Okay, so at this point, I know some of you might be saying, but Adam, Škoda Auto was sold off to Volkswagen Group in 2000, so technically it's not Czech. No. Škoda cars are still Czech because multiple models, including the Superb, are still produced in Czechia to this day. So yes, the company and its cars are still Czech. Anyway, throughout the 2000s and 2010s, Škoda Transportation began to develop a fleet of trams, with the most successful models so far being the Škoda 15T 4-City Alpha, of which 298 have been produced since 2009. You can see these trams everywhere in Prague, Czechia, and Riga, Latvia. A version of the 15T is even produced under license in China. They currently operate for tram systems in Qingdao and Fengshan. There's even a few older models of Škoda trams that run on the Portland and Seattle streetcar systems, although they were developed along with another Czech firm called Incheon. To this day, Škoda Transportation continues the Škoda Works legacy in locomotive production, with trains such as the Regio Panther. Currently, 231 Regio Panther trains and their variants operate services in Czechia, Slovakia, Latvia, Estonia, and soon will operate train services in Uzbekistan and Bulgaria as well. Anyway, in 2025, trams and trains aren't really what Škoda is known for around the world. It's the company's cars, which are iconic, affordable, and reliable. In Central Europe, for example, you can see Škoda Octavia cars in nearly every town, city, and village. Go to Google Street View and click on a random town in, say, Slovakia, and I guarantee you, somewhere in that village or town, there will be some kind of Škoda car in the picture. Outside of Central and Eastern Europe, Škoda is primarily known as a budget brand, with Top Gear even doing a very positive review on the Škoda Yeti back in 2011. In the 2020s, Škoda Auto has also been venturing into electric and hybrid vehicle production, with EV models such as the Enyaq iV being produced in Mladá Boleslav in Czechia. And that's how we arrived to today, a world where Škoda cars grace the roads of nearly every European and Asian country, a world where Škoda locomotives are used in nearly 30 countries around the world, a world where a company hailing from a country of just 10 million people is so well known. This was the history of Škoda. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to see more content like this, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. And have a great rest of your day.